So real farming for us all, as it is for indigenous agriculturalists worldwide, is a priesthood of sea and food, whose men and women dress beautifully and meaningfully, whose every article of clothing is a handmade message to the holy, in which they walk. They go to work, highly educated in a culture and music, in all the procedures of the agreements and the emotions of the earth. They are courteous, dignified, capable, permanently ornate with song and the deliciousness of language in how they move, and not heavily trudging, ogrish, or armored, but subtle in the way they go about every facet of their food, the planting, the preparation of the fields, the shakes of the terraces and fields, the tools, the carrying bags, the way they dance the food home, the design of granaries in the kitchens, the shape of the pots, the way they are stirred, the way things are ground, and on what they are ground. For their food to them is nothing less than the face of the holy in the sea. These farmers' voices are heavier and more worthy than gold. Their tools, though practical and strong, are more beautifully adorned than carved jade. And the holy in nature forgives these kinds of humans when their voices sing to their hearts in the wild. For farmers must deeply and intelligently make music, dress beautifully while they farm. For that's how we were made. That's how we used to be. So let's find ourselves again. For beautiful farming is something utterly doable. That's Martin Pretzel. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about Early Bird Farm and Mill. I'm going to tell our vision statement and our mission statement, and then I'm going to get into grain. So our vision statement at Early Bird, we're more than farmers and millers. We're stewards of the land, we're keepers of ancient wisdom, we're builders of resilient communities. Our mission is to restore vitality through regenerative agriculture, stone-milled grains, and the rhythms of a life well lived. We believe in craftsmanship, discipleship, and hospitality, creating spaces where truth is pursued, people are nourished, and traditions are both honored and reimagined. In a world that moves fast, we choose the slow, the intentional, the deeply rooted. We're growing more than grain, we're growing a way of life. Our mission is to cultivate a sustainable, regenerative community by producing the highest quality, healthful grains and flour. We aim to foster deep connections with the land, God, and each other through education, hospitality, and spiritual disciplines. Our work centers on promoting regenerative agriculture, farming practices, nurturing emotional resilience, and creating a replicable model of farming that strengthens community and fosters a love for both creation and creator. We strive to continuously learn and teach each other through stewardship of the earth, ensuring a lasting legacy of nourishment and growth for future generations. Okay. Thank you. So our farm, established in 2014, focuses on producing grains and flour and partnering with other regenerative farms as well to produce the most flavorful, the most fresh, the most nutrient-dense grains available. And we're also developing an educational farm site where we reside in Wilsonville. We are, so to give a greater perspective of who we are, I'll share a little bit our bold vision statement with you, but now I'm going to talk about gluten. So it's like gluten is like the modern villain of the modern food world, right? Or isn't? We've been, because what if the problem is not gluten itself, but the way that we've been growing and processing and consuming our grains? So at Early Bird, we believe in reviving and mastering the art of creating true stone-milled flour, and the flour that's nutritious, is healthful, and is supportive of our gut health. And so tell you a brief. I mean, we started milling flour. I had a great passion for soil. I talked about a little bit about that last year if you were here. Regenerative food and nutrition. We talked about that, and feeding our families and our children well, which is part of what we're doing at Early Bird Farm. Is we're focused on growing grains that go to the school systems. So we're really on a mission to bring back full grain flour and vibrant health and sustainable farming. So the basic gist is the problem with modern flour is the industrial roller mills strip away the bran and the germ. And the white flour that most industrial mills are developing, it spikes your blood sugar. It lacks any nutrients at all. And the fast rise processes that they have for making bread that we buy in the stores, it lacks fermentation for digestion. So it basically has nothing in it. Why whole grain is better? It has the bran and the germ and the endosperm all intact, right? And it's rich in fiber, it's rich in minerals, it's rich in healthy oils and vitamins, and it supports the digestion and gut health, especially when it's fermented.
It's like, take it.
So for 10 years, we've been milling flour, and we have just started to, just next week, actually, we're going to be installing a new mill that we've been working on for a year and a half. And it's called the Austrier. It's a French technology, and it unrolls the grain in one pass instead of kind of traditional stone mills. They go several passes through the mill before it comes out, and so that generates some heat. And so we've been going, okay, how can we get more nutrition, more flavor than ever before? And so we're developing this open source technology. It's called Austrier. It's called Austrier family. We're to develop this way. What it does is it sands the outside of the grain, and then it unrolls the rest of it in one pass, and then it pushes it rather than we usually use oxygen to push the flour. This, instead of oxidizing the flour, we'll push it with augers. And so it's just going to push it through and push it where it needs to go. And so it'll be basically the most nutritious, most flavorful grain and flour that I know of, and I've been doing this a long time. And it's going to be a lighter flour. It's to be more versatile for more things. And the first people that are going to get the benefits of this mill is Mount Diablo School District, which we're super excited about, that the kids are the first people to be able to enjoy this flour. So it's like, what can you do? You can dry stone milled flour. You can learn to bake with whole grains. We have so many recipes on our website about whole grains and in all sorts of ways, and corn too. So, and of course, supporting sustainable local farming. So I'm going to nerd out a little bit on you with wheat so that you can kind of understand really why gluten is not a problem. It's really the process that's the problem. So the outer layer, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the anatomy of a wheat berry. Wheat berry is hard. It's, you'll break your teeth if you try to eat it by itself, unless you're picking it from the field. And it's actually really delicious. But so it's 14.5% of the kernel is bran, and it's a multi-layered hard layer, and it's rich in antioxidants, B vitamins, and fiber. And those three fibrous layers, and the ileon, it also has protein. It has protein, it has vitamins, has phytic acid. And so what that phytic acid does is this sort of insoluble fibers, and those insoluble fibers actually help break down the gluten, the proteins that are really hard to break down, except for if you have them sharp in your body, and that's what's doing it. And so then you have the middle layer, the endosperm. That's when you go to the store and you buy white flour. It's just endosperm. So this is the largest part of the kernel. It's the primary source of white flour. It's mainly starch with a little bit of minerals, a little bit of protein, depending on the kind of flour you have is the kind of protein it is. But the reason that people have the problem with gluten is not because it's because you don't have the rest of it. You don't have the bran. You don't have the germ. The inner core has the germ, right? And that's the embryo of the wheat kernel. And it has so many B vitamins and protein, has minerals and healthy fats. And so the oils that are in that germ help you to digest and help you to be able to process the grains, and so that the grain will actually absorb into your body properly. And so that's it, man. There's four main kinds of wheat, right? There's soft white, there's hard white, there's red winter wheat, there's red spring wheat, there's durum wheat, So hard white wheat, usually really high protein content, 12%. It's sweet and mild, and it can be used for sandwich breads. It can be used for Asian food, stuff like that. We have some Edison wheat. It's a great hard red wheat or hard white wheat that you can check out at our table over there. We have red winter wheat. Protein content is about 10%. It's a really nutty, robust flavor. Great for breads, yeast breads. It's also great for making wheatgrass. And we do sell the whole berry so that people can plant wheatgrass. We have soft white wheat berries, which that's about 14% content, and it's a sweet and mild, but it's great for pastries. Really doesn't give as good of a rise for breads. It's good for adding into breads, but it's not good for by itself breads. But sweet treats and like you want to make high crust, our Alpoa soft white wheat is perfect for those type of things. Red spring wheat. The difference between winter wheat and spring wheat is the only when it's planted, right? And so in the winter wheat, you don't get as much nutrition in the soil as the spring wheat. When the spring wheat was harvested, more nutrition for soil, therefore you get a higher protein content, more nutrition. It's straight for sourdough breads, it's straight for your starters and things like that. So about what I'm about to get into now is if you have any questions about the deeper, want to go deeper about the research, I'm happy to give you some information. Just email me. You have my card is over there because I'm going to get some info here. So gluten is a natural protein. It's found in wheat that gives bread its structure, right? And we've been making bread for 30,000 years or more. We've been consuming hybridized wheat that humans have interacted with, einkorn, farro, couscous, rye, more recently triticale, developed by people manipulating, crossing different varieties of these plants. We've been doing this for 5,000 or 6,000 years. So we've been doing it a long time. Yet gluten itself has been unfairly demonized because of these modern processing methods. So the three primary reasons why gluten intolerance has skyrocketed. One, industrial flour know. Roller milled white flour, it removes the bran, it removes the fiber, removes the germ, which is the nutrient, and so it leaves only the starchy endosperm. And this stripped down flour, it spikes your blood sugar, and it leads to inflammation. Huge problem. Second problem is fast fermentation and mass production of bread. Because the wheat is produced to have these high protein content so that they can make it really fast, the traditional bread making like sourdough allows time for the fermentation to break down the gluten proteins, making them more digestible, right? And modern bread is pumped with quick rise yeasts and additives, which skip in the quick step so that they can make bread faster and sell it faster. So the third reason is concentrated hybridization of varieties on high levels of protein. So they're just interested in wanting to make bread as fast as possible. So they're developing the strains of grain that will just focus on how much protein can we get. Who cares about the bran? Who cares about the wheat germ? All of that. So I've done some studies. We've compared our grains, same exact variety, with some of the bigger organic growers that are more toward the bigger industry growing. And we compared the grains in the lab, at the bread lab in Wheat Woodland. And we found that our grains were twice the size. They were lower in protein, but the proteins were way higher quality, and they had better stretchability, better elasticity. They were better all around. They had better flavor, just better in all ways. And I think we're just paying attention to how we grow the soil, how we take care of the soil, so the soil can take care of the plant. So they just don't take into account the things that we take into account for at early bird, like other crucial parts of the brain that are needed for the proper digestion in the span of evolutionary time. So it's only until recently that humans have stopped spending the entirety of their daily caloric intake hunting and foraging, right? Which is what, like, if some people would say that's a true animal to earth balance, is that hunting and foraging. However, it was about 10,000 years ago that in a region called the Fertile Crescent, where emmer and einkorn grasses were possibly the first domesticated food crop, wheat. And that allowed humans to stay at one place. And so that desirable part of the wheat plant that consisting of the bran, the germ, the endosperm, after the harvest is ground into flour. It's like, what did I say about it? There's these various phytochemicals that are essential to increase survivability. And in the bran and the wheat berries are these phenol compounds that make up like 89 to 95% of the grain. And what's not known by a lot of people is this is the class of ferulic acid. And ferulic acid is an antioxidant, and it's considered the building blocks of the plant. And it consists of pectin and lignin, which are the cell wall structure components. They're bound by ester walls that they act as the protective barrier from the sea. And all of these things, like if we don't consume the whole thing, then our body it's not truly eating what it's supposed to be eating. You eat the white flour and your body doesn't know what to do with it. It works very hard to digest it. Your liver has to work very hard. And then you basically end up with sugars, a high level of sugar in your body, insulin. So the major presence of this ferulic acid in wheat berries contributes to the majority of human health benefits from the wheat plant. It's why we grind it into flour. Anybody who bakes bread knows that you have to ferment it first. And so when we have these giant corporations that are making bread as fast as they can, they don't care about that fermentation process. They just want you to feed. And then what happens is you eat it, right? And you don't feel full. And the reason for that is because there's no true carbohydrates. You're eating these carbohydrates that are empty. They don't have anything in them because your body has to work really hard and is tired. That's why you feel tired and sluggish after eating a big meal with a lot of carbohydrates. It's because the wheat is strict. So if you eat whole grain, right, whole grain, it's just a couple slices of bread, put a little bit on it for lunch, you feel full until dinner time, right? Because you have all of the nutrition and your body knows what to do with it. And it feels, so those are the good carbohydrates, the kind that, you carry for a long time. You go to the store and buy that bread, it's not going to give you that energy that we need. And dare I say, there are some psychological factors to this gluten issue. There's a study found that gluten sensitivity in non-celiac individuals, so I'm not talking about celiac is actual disease, is often influenced by expectations. It's called the nocebo effect. So participants, they reported symptoms based upon their beliefs about gluten. And the nocebo effect in gluten sensitivity is characterized by this. You have symptom manifestation based on expectations, right? So you have people that anticipate negative effect from the gluten consumption, then tend to experience symptoms, and which is why they haven't even eaten the gluten. But then they say, "Oh, we're going to get these symptoms. Where you think we are?" And then they get them. They're way done. So they actually have real physical symptoms, right? Sometimes people actually have real physical symptoms, and those are genuine, and they can have a stomach ache, bloating, diarrhea, all these things. But it's all from psychological factors. The dummy studies are very interesting. So I challenge you to examine your food beliefs, right? Individuals could critically evaluate your beliefs around food and what you know about it. And other foods, you think about the origins of these beliefs and their validity. I think the fact that you're here and listening to this talk is a great start, Don't say it. What else? So, only 1% of folks have celiac disease, requiring a gluten-free diet. Many people who think they're gluten sensitive, especially when they have tried whole grain breads and they're still experiencing problems, they may be actually reacting to fructans, and fructans are another component in wheat. So what are fructans? Fructans are a type of fermentable carbohydrate. They're short chain fiber that are found in wheat. They're found in onion, garlic, asparagus, bananas, other fruit stuff, and they belong to a group of FODMAPs. So FODMAPs are for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polysaccharide. So they're known to cause digestive distress to some people. And so that may be part of the reason. And if you ferment the grains, you don't have this problem of having the fructose. So fructans are poorly digested. They're poorly digested in the small intestine, and that's the problem with that. And so when they're broken down, then they ferment in the gut cutting. So sourdough fermentation is like everything when it comes to grains. Sourdough bread will help, especially if you have a hard time with wheat. Sourdough bread is what it's all about. In fact, if you have raw goat milk and sourdough bread, fresh loaf sourdough bread, that gives you everything the body needs. All the chains, everything is there. And so, there's so many people that claim they can't eat wheat, but they can often tolerate slow fermented sourdough bread, and this is why. And so unlike this white flour, the whole grain retains more of the wheat's natural fiber. Yeah, so I'm excited about the Austria mill. Next week we're gonna put it up, and so I would say next month, check our website, and you'll see that those new products are available.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm talking about the permaculture garden and the difference between a permaculture garden and a regular garden. And the difference is connection. Permaculture garden is all about connection and how things connect to each other so that we can connect nature and ourselves and create less work and get more yield. Someone once told me and asked me a question, what's the difference between chaotic order and orderly chaos? So I thought about it for a second, and chaotic order was more like a agricultural field in the middle of the valley where everything's just in straight rows and everything is all the same and orderly. But as far as nature is concerned, everything is purely chaotic. Everything's not connected. And the opposite of that is orderly chaos, which is like the Amazon jungle. So we have all this chaos going on, but everything's connected and everything works and everything flows so that you can continue on forever, basically. And the more and more we do this in our garden, we get less and less work we have to do because everything fulfills itself. So all these plants and animals that we're growing today are connecting ourselves and the landscape and each other so that they can be companion plants and free beneficial insects and do all these wonderful things that make your garden thrive in abundance. We always talk about in permaculture, we have 3 ethics in permaculture, and that's care of people, care of earth, and return of surplus. So we're always trying to return that surplus to the garden, to the earth, so that the earth can continue and feed us as well. We have a thing we call the elemental analysis. So we're looking at the characters in our landscape and we're seeing the needs that they have, the yields that they have, and we're trying to connect them in the landscape so that the chicken can connect to the garden and the garden can connect to the chickens, and the fertility from the chickens can feed the garden and the orchard, and all these connections can start making things a lot easier. Oh, sorry. Okay. So permaculture, like I was saying, is all about connection. So we're looking at the needs and the yields of all these characters in our landscape. If we look at an apple tree, its needs are water and soil and fertility and pollination and all of these things. But it also gives shade, it gives apples, it gives fertility in the form of mulch, and it gives beauty, and it gives us all the things that we use apples for. And these other elements around the garden can also connect with it. So you can also have the chickens, which need fertility and apples and food and stuff like that. But they give chicken poop and scratching and eating bugs so that those 2 elements can start connecting. When you start connecting more of the plants in the garden with the nature and the bees and the elements and characters in your landscape, they start making more of an ecosystem. The more this ecosystem grows, the more it does the functions that you would normally have to fulfill in your garden. So you don't have to fight the bugs as much because there's more beneficial insects. You don't have to manage fertility as much because the soil is really alive and connected to all the plants through the beneficial microbes and beneficial mycorrhizal will cling at it. And through all these connections, we start to build up, like I said, our ecosystem, which provides more and more of the things that we want, which is food and flowers and with beauty and enjoyment and all these wonderful things. And we start to achieve all the goals that we want through this permaculture design. And permaculture is basically a design system to just create the garden that is the painting that you wish. So you can have a garden that is all flowers, you can have a garden with all vegetables, and you can have a mix, trees and vegetables and animals and plants, wildlife and all these things if you want, to create this painting that is exactly what we want. So all of you are coming here today to get seeds, and you're all connecting with everyone else, seeing whatever seeds they're collecting. Maybe you're exchanging information and they're turning surplus through knowledge. All these wonderful things that you guys are doing today. That's the form of what a permaculture garden is, through just a garden that's just out there that just grows tomatoes or just grows carrots. It's more of a interconnectedness that creates this abundance in community and abundance in community in your landscape as well. And in doing this, we can build soil and we can restore habitats, or we can create more diversity and we can create more yields so that we can attain all the yields that we're looking for. So you can preserve food through this matter, and you can create all the wonderful new vegetables that don't even exist yet by crossing things or saving your own seeds. And this is the permaculture garden. It's very diverse, and it's always getting more and more diverse over time. So you see more diversity and less problems, because the diversity is fulfilling all the functions that would be those problems. And in doing so, we're also creating the abundance that we're looking for. So like I said, permaculture is all about making connections in the landscape and connections in your garden. And that's what really makes the difference over permaculture garden and just a regular garden. Thank you.
Hayasco, Matrixus, Kanyanoyan, Henti Irene. I'm here today to talk about Taleli, Black Oak, Nufa, Acorn. Acorn is medicine. I'm going to start with a song because I think that will help quiet the crowd. And it's the way to this is how I've been taught, is to open and give thanks with songs. So this is a Owens Valley Paiute song, gathering song. All right. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, na, when they were not. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, when they na, when they was night. And boy, nani, oh, nani, oh, hey, oh, and na. And boy, nani, oh, nani, oh, hey, oh, and man. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, na, when they were na. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, na, when they went na. And boy, and me, oh, nani, oh, hey, oh, and na. And boy, and nani, oh, nani, oh, hey, oh, and na. Oh, thanks. So, I guess a little about myself. I'm from Mariposa. I'm enrolled with the Southern Sierra Miwok Nation from that area. So thanks for having me over here on this side. Long waves. Enough for an overnight trip. I grew up in my native community. I'm also Monolake Paiute on my mom's side. And I grew up eating acorn, not making it, but always with a willingness to learn how to. And so I worked one of my first jobs alongside my relatives to learn how to make it, basically, when I was a teenager. And I made it the traditional way. My first time I ever made acorn was with baskets and hot rocks. And that was what I wanted to do. And from there, it's kind of come full circle. And now my work is to really help restore those reciprocal relationships with with tribal partners, with friends, with family, and it's a passion of mine. Acorn is all around us, of course, in these oaks, and it's plentiful and healthy. It's like a superfood. 100 calories each acorn. Like, what? You can survive off only a few acorns for a long time. So I'm all about it. I'm nutty for acorns. My son's name is Muyo Acorn Bear. He loves it. It's the first food. A food that's treasured and cherished by elders. Everyone could eat it and needs it, should eat it. And there's more to that than that. There's about caring for the tree, having this understanding that these are time-honored relations. It goes on for hundreds of years. And there's a responsibility, of course, to give back, give honor, celebrate the oaks, and especially when they're giving you thousands of pounds of acorn, you sing to them. And so that's what we do. And it's necessary for all of us to give thanks, and we can do that. And a lot of people think that, these oaks are going to be fine forever. There's, climate change is happening. They're very resilient, thankfully. They're drought tolerant. But, they face many stresses, higher droughter conditions, fire, extreme fire, severe fire. And you could think about when a severe fire more often, we're getting more severe fires come through, it kills trees, the big trees, and they resprout, thankfully. They're resilient, but how long does it take for a giant tree to grow and produce hundreds of acorns? So these oaks that are giant and big, they're the result of care, of people intentionally burning the land for the production of main food staple. They're recognized as a cultural keystone species, these oaks, because of their food. And, anthropologists say that's what sticks around as the food. And yes, the food we're still making it, eating it, and singing to our trees.
Right.
And I want to encourage others to do that. At first, I was pretty hesitant about that, about sharing that info, of being like, yeah, this food is native food. This is food that is important of course, for Native people. Native people have high health disparities, lots of diabetes and things like that. But there's research out there that says acorn lowers glycemic indices. So there's so much importance why it's really important for Native people, but it's important for, I think, all people. And there is enough out there. This last fall proved it with all the acorn that fell. And we're still looking at acorn outside. Feel like treat. Go pick it up. Go harvest it. Learn how to make it. It's a very time-intensive process. It takes a lot of work. But that's skill and care that goes right into your body too. So slowing down, letting it, letting it cure and take its time to dry. Sure, you could put it by your wood stove if you want to dry it out faster if you want to make a fast mash. But I was going to try to do that, but I said, no, let's just let it do its thing and we'll make it in its time. And, it's a spiritual, ceremonial. The oaks provide, of course, heat, warmth to people's homes. There's so many reasons. There's music in the foot drums, the hollowed out oaks. So many purposes for oaks. So yes, they need to be celebrated and treasured. And that's all I could really think about. I guess I could look off more of my notes, but please interrupt me if anyone has questions. There's a lot of people who look interested. It's like, let's see. Here, I guess I would like to say that, people have been here a long time and they're still here. And people are still here. Plants co-evolved. People adapted with these plants, with this understanding that with knowledge, wisdom passed down through generations for many a time. And, I'm sure many of you here know that, these landscapes weren't terra nullius, weren't empty, and aren't just the result of people not interacting with them. Seems like this is what people know here. But that isn't everywhere. So, continue to educate people about everyone's responsibility, our responsibility to take care of your home, your landscapes, your trees, your plants. And I think that's what's happening here in this lake. Anyways, thank you very much for having me here. Yeah, go ahead.
You talked about how burning that stick.
Oh, yeah.
Where stick out and make a big whole lot of breath.
Oh, my implanted question. All right. Question was about burning and how that helps the tree. Low intensity fire. People, of course, living with these plants for baskets, for rattles. We needed fibers. We still need fibers. Baskets held water and held acorn cookbook. And put your acorn in your baskets. They make your cradles for your babies. But you need fire, good fire, to produce the quality of fibers that you need. And so over time, people watch natural fire, of course, live with fire every day. And you learn how to mimic it and produce good food for your, the wildlife that you need to hunt, the plants that you need to eat, all the seeds. So low intensity fire, good for many different things. Not everything. Other plants need high severity fire. You need a biodiversity of fire out there. Yeah. These mosaic landscape patchwork that build resilience, and we've got a lot of work out there to do. So and encourage, people to get wind breathing, scared of fire, but we need to be implementing that fire. And I wish we had a little pile of fire going right now outside.
I'm sure.
But maybe that will happen in the future here. It's a good time to be burning. Cool. Is that good, Mark?
Cool. Take those.
Okay. Go ahead, Claire.
It's great to see all of you too much here to get grad school.
Yeah.
I goes to RC and it's like so how street thicker heads.
So oaks are known as big nest feeders. They go and they oversaturate. At least that's what they tell us. Oversaturate the wildlife. So depending on the species, they will produce acorn in different years like that. But sometimes some trees you could find big mother trees that are pretty productive. And even these giant old trees that I've been gathering, they've got super acorns. So, you take care of a tree for generations, it's gonna give you back really good acorn. But yeah, 3 to 4 years, sometimes 5 to 6, depending on the generations, the weather and things. But black oak, man, those acorns take 2 years to produce from the tree till they're ready. So lots of things can affect the development of those acorns. Yeah. Gather when the gathering's good. And sorrow. What a crazy question. Yeah, you can. Now that there's a project in the works to allow gathering legally in our public land. In the Forest Service, there's a big agreement. There's an agreement that went in through the NEPA process, National Environmental Protection Act. So that's been allowed, and it's got a different mission than the Park Service. So the land of many uses, versus land of preservation, So we're working on that. And yeah,
So,
yeah, it's just we want to be able to gather acorn and take care of the oak where our ancestors lived and continue to visit and hold sacred. Yeah.
and I think I went to go saw the sand is like the
Oh, that's a good. What are other ways we can take care of oaks and give love to the tree?
structure to the table.
Immediately, what comes to mind is like eat acorn.
I should build the feeling.
I'd say spend time beneath them, help clean them out. You know, when they have a lot of dead and down branches around them, like take that away so that their young acorns could come up. The understory species that are, live with them. You gotta spend time with them and know that you want to clear away that stuff so that if a fire does come, they don't burn up, they don't burn hot. So there's work to do. Yeah, you gotta spend time outside and move wood. Go ahead, Kurt.
Let's see if we can do is it for I don't recognize this, but let's on the two.
Yeah, the state.
Right now, okay, question about supporting non-acknowledged tribes. Different tribes are in different processes of acknowledgement, especially here in California. There were 18 non-ratified treaties that have still consequences for people like me today with not being having acknowledged sovereignty. So I'd say wherever you are locally, reach out, figure out where you live, reach out to those people, learn how you could support their initiatives in your own homes. Yeah. Even if it means like showing up to grow a taco at the taco fair or something that's their biggest fundraiser, like reach out to that community to see how you can get involved. Yeah.
All
All right. Okay, go ahead.
It's going back so that fair for that others had when it's going to us and stuff like that. So it's like any input.
Yeah.
The lean like speak like I was thinking idea from the ocean. I said,
Go.
thinking actually senior.
Yes.
But it comes from both sides. And in the friend of that, it's I said,
Bringing the what?
she had any sense about like
Oh, that's a good idea. Bringing the salmon back to the oaks. Yeah, giving your offerings. Yes, to the trees. For arborists, think of oaks as orchards. They are fruit acorns of fruit. So yes, you could, trim them at the right time when they're, going into dormancy. Make them have healthy looking branches. People in the old days would knock off limbs, knock the trees awake to bring down the acorns. So there is traditional structures to oaks where they encourage, big broad branches and low hanging branches so people, kids could climb them and go get acorn. So think of creating healthy trees like an orchard. Yeah.
That's like don't just go into the out at 8 months like this national is
Yeah.
this big process now yet.
Oh, if you have sprouted acorns, better to just clamp those. Put them in the ground. Collect the acorns before they sprout and keep them dry. Yeah. And there's a lot of resources you could find online or in books, Tending the Wild, it's about how to process acorn. Yeah. And then I think I'm going to just close with another song, an acorn song, and that would be good. Again, an acorn headless song. I gotta think of it.
Not sorry.
Acorn.
All
Doing.
points off that.
Yeah. How's that song go? Start, Kevin. Yeah, hey, yeah, boo. Yeah, hey, yeah, Ford. Yeah, hey, yeah, so the way with hey, anyway, your way to hide your sorrow. Hey, you really let on. Hey, hoping it's not yeah, hope. Yeah, nice and rabbit. Yeah, goals, and yeah, boy, yeah, hey, way what for me. Hey, where was by Eddie? Yeah, roll and one heap. Yeah, and you're all on the other side. Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, hey, hey, oh, hey, oh, and your girls, hey, hey, I can't be strong. Yeah, I'm being coming on the end. We start on the street and we'll put us in now, and now me that, hey, how was? And on the name, I lose on your head. Oh, dear, I use me. And think it was rare. I come down, man. Oh, yeah. Don't touch them. Thank you. I think taste. Thank you. Okay. All right. Good. All right. Have a good session. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Mike Pulskamp.
That's correct.
I'm a flatlander. This feels weird up here. That's part of the reason we ended up with straw bale. Of course, most straw is the remnants of a grain harvest. We fell in love with straw bale building back in 1996. My wife and I went to the state fair, and a group called the California Straw Builders Association had a booth there where they had a little mock-up. So when we went there, we saw that, and we absolutely fell in love with it. The thickness of the walls is really the thing that caught us. There's all sorts of reasons to build with straw. It can be an incredibly green, actually carbon negative building practice, because all that straw generally rots if it's left out, or we're burning it years ago. But really, I'm not as green as I could be. Our house has an enormous amount of concrete in it, and an enormous amount of steel in it. It has quite a bit of wood. But if some of the houses, some of the buildings, are even load-bearing, and they have very little other than straw, in some cases clay plaster. Ours is clay plaster. Lots of times they use a lime plaster, a little bit more weather permanent. You've got to design differently for those. But we've got straw buildings in Nebraska that are well over 100 years old, lasting just fine, and those are actually structural. The straw holds up the raise. They're just a little bit younger than the initial mechanical baling machines. As soon as the bales showed up, they started stacking the bales like bricks. But straw has been used to build homes and buildings since we came out of the trees. I figure we probably came down with the wolves and spent 2 or 3 nights on the ground in the holes with the wolves, and then we said, hey, we could do better. Let's get some grass and some mud and build a wall. We never really looked back. In our case, we built a pretty large house. It's a 1,950 square foot main house with a 1,000 square foot ADU, all under one freestanding steel reef. So our reef is 100 feet long and 60 feet deep, a la a steel horse arena. Then we built the perimeter walls with straw bale, stacked up to and framed up to that steel structure. This is the first one that I know of that was built with this kind of technique. There was one built back in the early 90s that used a steel crutch system for the reef, but ours is the heavy iron, just like you'd see a horse arena or a warehouse. It has all the support for the reef is all the way out of the perimeter of the pad, because for straw bale, keeping water out of the straw is the prime directive. The only real threat to straw is moisture getting in there and the straw rotting. So if you can keep it dry, it'll last indefinitely. So that's the thought process through the whole design. We say a great hat and boots. We have a 7-foot overhang over the whole house, so we can chase the shade or chase the sun all year long, find a shady spot to sit or in a sunny spot to sit anywhere around the house any day. That keeps it all dry. So we're using locally sourced clay-based plasters throughout, in both inside and out, right down there near Ione, and that's where we're building. There's U.S. Mines has one of the 2 biggest clay pits on the West Coast right there. And we're mixing it with a mortar mixer. It's clay, sand, straw, and water. Different mixtures for different layers. And you pack that right onto the straw bales. In our case, the straw bales are stacked between studs in a truss system, a wall truss, that's just the dimensions of the straw bales. So they slip right into that and lock it really nice and firm. And this is all engineered. It's all to code. There's been straw bale in the building code for close to 20 years now, and it's not experimental. It's actually code, as is both cob and light straw, which are other straw-based building techniques. We've been on this process of this house we broke ground in May of 23, and we moved into the house in October last year. So it's been a long, arduous adventure, and we're not done by a long shot. We've got lots and lots of plaster work to still do. So if anybody wants to come down and get muddy, it's a very human building technique. It's playing with mud. The whole thing is stacking Legos and playing with mud. So it's a lot of fun. Super insulating, very quiet. It feels like you're in a cozy kind of cave castle, only it's warm instead of cold. Really neat technology. Calaveras County has a couple dozen homes that are built in this way. Amador has about a dozen. Tuolumne has more even. Tuolumne has cob houses that were permitted in code. What cob is a monolithic adobe. It's another version of this. It's not bales of straw, but it's straw in the clay mixture that you build actually wet. So you're building giant pottery that you're living in. Interesting stuff, and they're all related. I don't know, any questions?
I think that just not keep it dry.
How do we keep it dry? Well, we've got a 7-foot overhang all the way around under a steel roof, in our case. Everything was designed to keep plumbing and any large pieces of metal away from the straw. So the areas where our plumbing came in, and we put lots of thought into this, there's only really 2 walls that have plumbing in them that are exterior walls. And each of those walls is framed in with wood framing and fiberglass insulation at the same width as the straw, so it doesn't look weird. But it's basically both kitchen sinks. So everything is about keeping the water out. And then the straw doesn't want to hold water, but if you use, one of the reasons why we use clay and lime also plasters is that they're hydroponic. They actually pull the water away. Any moisture that is there gets sucked to the outside of the wall to evaporate.
So now I saw the great dreams.
The easiest way to do it, and most of us work on other people's projects. CASBA, the California Straw Builders Association, is probably the biggest and easiest accessible group. There are other groups. Strawbale.com does wonderful trainings, but they're usually week-long or 2-week-long workshops. CASBA's workshops are all over the state, and they're usually just a 2-day weekend. My wife and I, Deborah, have worked on at least a couple dozen other houses for other people. It's a great experience. Very much a la old style barn raising, where people just come together in a community and you learn hands-on while you're doing the labor. It's rather labor-intensive building technology, but it's labor that anyone can be involved in. Stacking bales is a chore. They weigh upwards of 80 pounds per bale. But even if somebody is very strong, 2 or 3 people can get together on that, and they're completely doable. The plastering work it's literally playing with mud. We've had 3-year-olds come out and actually help, have 80-year-olds out there working on it. Everybody in between. It's a very human way to build, much more so than paying someone to build a stick-built house. Nope. It's all to code. It's the International Building Code, which is what most of our jurisdictions use. And there's a sweet spot for it, probably for each project. The walls are thick, and you're paying property taxes on, in most cases, the outside measurement of that wall. So there's a ratio. The bigger you make it, the less that wall impacts your total. But there are some counties in California even who have I'm losing Mike here, who have rules in there modifying those fees such that they measure it as if it were a 6x wall. So you can do the figuring, and they'll only tax you as if it were a 6x exterior wall. So that's pretty cool. I mean, amateur won't do that for me, but it's getting better and better.
Hunter sidewalk, not it real walls goes back without both your base and a cover or you but you says there we will then with the
Oh, very. Yeah. The insulation properties on it are kind of off the chart. It's not so much that their numbers sound good. Their numbers aren't great. You're in the 40 to 50 range for a 24-inch bale. But the thing is, at a certain point, that's so thick that the temperature never gets through it, from the outside on the hottest day or the coldest day. The heat doesn't transfer through. So it's very stable inside. We still have, right now, we're still working on our plastering and finishing. We've got gaps. You can see sunlight around our doorways and stuff. And we have mini splits that we hardly ever turn on. It's very nice for that.
I mean, I might rate of use a little bit other than the goblet space.
In our case, the roof is supported by the steel frames. In most cases, most of them are post and beam timber. But there are some, I don't think any in California have been permitted to have load-bearing straw, but the original ones in Nebraska are load-bearing straw. So the roof actually sits on a box beam that's built to hold, to spread the weight, but it is actually the straw. So come on out, learn how to plaster. It's fun. We can go this afternoon. Got lots of it. We are plaster mixed already. It washes off really easy. It's great stuff. I own? Right down by the casino. But they're all over. There's a bunch right around up here. I know, I worked on one in Tuolumne, a cob structure that was just outstanding. Is it yours? With Misha?
Sure.
Awesome.
And what?
Alashiba? Yeah. Alashiba? Oh, we got a hug. Okay. Awesome right here. A master of this. Absolutely. Cool. Any questions? Yeah.
He's building the house.
Well, we had a general contract who did the framing and all the regular stuff. It's my house. Yeah. We developed it for 20 plus years. Wife and I grinding on ideas and focus on, do we do this? Do we do that? We didn't go as far as her and the sight lines all being a Fibonacci. Beautiful. But, we did think of everything down to like how long each hot water line would be, how many cups of wasted water there would be getting from places. We put a lot of effort into design.
What Kasha calls it 12.
So reach out to COSBA. They're very accessible here in the state. There's also the Caneo project in New Mexico. As beautiful a plaster work as you'll ever see anywhere. You can really be expressive with these buildings. Very rounded and organic, artistic. You can build niches and curved spaces. It really lends itself to that stuff. It's not a cold white plastic spaceship look. It's absolute opposite of that. It's living in hobbit holes and very soft and human. Cool.
You know, it's what was in he's so explain for
No, ours aren't. A lot of people do use lime plasters as an exterior, but with our overhangs, we decided to just go with the clay based. We've watched the last 2 years of storms come through, and we get a little bit of splash up onto the walls, but it's minimal. And once that first little coat of finish rinses off, it kind of leaves the hardest stuff there, and it won't deteriorate. I'm not worried about it at all. And even if you do, all you got to do is go out there with a sponge and wet it again and put more on. It's a very forgiving way to build. Want to change something? Just change it. It's neat stuff. Permitting in Amador County, we couldn't have had a better experience with the code officials. They were fighting with each other about who got to come out and inspect our house. They all wanted to be involved. It was super helpful. Our architect lives up in Medford, Oregon area. The engineer who did the engineering plans, I think, is in Colorado, but they have a stamp for California, so that was super easy to get through permitting. The hardest part of permitting, of course, is paying for it. But yeah, it's been great. I haven't heard anything about Calaveras. I know there's plenty of buildings here, so it can't be too hard. Amador was great. I assume sometimes it goes in, if you go in early and make friends with them and point out that you don't see them as the enemy, because we want the same things in most cases. You want your house to stand up and be safe. You want property values to stay up. They have to collect some fees. They don't get it. The people you're talking to, it's not going to their pocket. So, yeah. The other thing that comes up a lot is fire. The testing was done about 20 years ago for fireproofing these houses. And it's a complicated test in a lab where there's a pattern of high BTU torches that have to be put a certain distance at a certain temperature from the outside of a wall. And after 20 minutes, the inside temperature of the wall can't rise more than 100 degrees. They did this testing with the same exact layout that we're doing. Straw bales on edge, just 16-inch straw with about an inch and 3/8 of clay plaster on each side. After an hour, they were able to get a read on the thermometer. So they would have passed code with a 100-degree change in 20 minutes. With this process, an hour, 3 times as long, they had a noticeable read. And people said, yeah, well, that's just lab testing. But the fires that went through places like Paradise in the last 10 years, this played out exactly like that. You'll see a whole neighborhood of stick-built houses that are just ash foundations and fireplaces, and all of a sudden there's a straw bale house just sitting there that made it through the fire. There's damage. There's going to be damage in something like that. The windows will blow out. Things will get burned, but the house is still standing. Pretty neat. And Cobb even more so. It's all been tested. Ours is engineer stamped. The earthquake testing did very well in that lab testing. And I haven't heard of any being damaged in earthquakes. It's probably harder to get through the permitting process in some place like LA. Not just for LA, but also for seismic. This area in Sacramento and stuff is pretty quiet seismic speaking. But I haven't heard of any damage due to that.
So there's a plastic on heaven. It's like all day.
Well, thank you for having me. Have fun and go out and get on the project. They really are a blast.
All right. The question is that classes Vietnam, British, I think, and Mr. Acorn Tortillas data. So there's a couple ways to harvest acorns. The first thing you want to do is pick the right tree. the right tree is really important. You want to get nice big nuts. They want to be on the ground where it's clean. You don't want it in like a bunch of grass. You don't want to be picking them off the side of the road where there's a lot of oil and stuff like that. So like the first thing to pay attention to is where the oak tree is. The next thing is the type of varieties. The live oaks are really tiny and they have a lot of oil and they don't really make the best breads and stuff, but they make really good like pastries and things like that. I prefer like blue oak and black oak. Those are my two favorites. The best, I'm still learning how to like process them the fastest way, but I just pick them up off the ground and then hit them with the little rock or a mortar and pestle that splits them open. Then they're easy to peel. And then I soak them and you replace the water every day for about a week and taste it. It might need a couple more days. It might need 3 or 4 days, depending on the tree. And then I grind them up in my little mill. So I have a wet mill and it makes like a masa. And then you can make tortillas, you can make bread. The other way to do it is to pick them up and then let them dry in the shell so that the nut actually shrinks, but the shell doesn't. And then the shell gets really brittle and you can just kind of break it. Then you have to rehydrate it and re-leach it and then regrind it again before you can use it. So
I think you said
Now I want to try it.
the acorn tortillas are like the best. That's so freaking good. Any more questions? Who has questions about gardening or plants or animals or grafting or anything of the universe?
Wait.
Here, ask the question in there.
What are the advantages of grafting over just growing from, like, say, growing a walnut from seed or something, or grafting to a black walnut, an English walnut to a black walnut? What is your experience with that kind of thing, growing from seeds, trees, nut trees?
So I actually like doing both. Grafting is really wonderful because you can get a known variety. So over here, there's tons and tons of varieties there. If you like a rare King Henry apple, you can get that and you can graft it. So that's the benefit of grafting. I find the benefit of planting things from seed is you could potentially create new varieties. So I have probably 30 or 40 or 50 trees on the farm from seed. And I would say only 1 or 2 are acceptable and the rest are really good or exceptional. So that whole thing where if you plant the tree from seed, it's going to be crap most of the time is not horribly true. Apples are a little more variant, but they still actually do come pretty good to tree. So the benefit of planting things seed directly in the ground is you take advantage of the taproot. So most of the trees that I planted from seed directly are pretty much non-existent needs of irrigation. So because they have that really nice deep taproot, you don't have to water them at all, if any. The benefit of grafting is you get to pick all the variables. There it goes.
I get tears.
You can choose your rootstock size. So depending on how big your tree gets, so if you want a small tree, a medium tree, a big tree, or a giant tree, you can pick that. You can pick your rootstock depending on what kind of soil you have. So if you have clay soil or sandy soil or silty soil, like you can pick the variety that will do best there. The problem when you go to the big box store and you get all those trees in the barrels and the sawdust and the sand is they're using the rootstock and stuff that works best for them. It's not necessarily for you. So choosing your own rootstock and choosing your own varieties is more likely to give you a much better success. And then, like I said, doing it from seed is slow because you potentially create new varieties. So I have peaches on my farm that exist nowhere else in the world but my farm, and they're just spectacular.
Like the strong is yeah.
Next question.
How do you spread them seed balls?
So you have to go through cold stratification. So what I do is in probably about November, December, they go into a bag with some really just slightly moist compost, not too wet. And then I put them in the fridge. And then usually around this time of year, you start checking on them. And then they'll start to sprout. And then you just still put them outside. I prefer to put them into air prune beds or go into the ground.
That's you.
Air prune beds. So it's like a box that's raised off the ground so that when the taproot goes through, it doesn't go into the soil, it hits air. When it hits air, it like rebranches the roots and then those hit the air, and then they rebranch, and then those hit the air and they rebranch. And you end up with this tree with like incredible amounts of fibrous root system, and they just take off compared to the trees that you buy that are just basically like a stick, and some roots and so on. You should be able to plant a fruit tree and it should grow 5-6 feet at least in one season instead of like 4 inches like some people.
Especially that's what it's there. In the family robot.
No, any more questions?
You must be talked about chickens and on days. No, you got started. I just I wonder understand can you eat another egg so
So I have the chicken composting system. I call it the chicken composting fertility engine. It makes some of the best compost I've ever made, and I've made a lot of compost. Like, I want to say I've made 6,000 yards plus in my time, and many, many different styles. I have this area that's basically a deep litter pen where chickens that's sitting on top of a gigantic worm bin, so that all the vegetation from the farm, the weeds, the extra stuff, leaves, all goes into there.
so
That creates enough microbiological activity where in each fork that I dig, there's probably 300 or 400 worms at least.
I don't know.
And in the whole pen, there's got to be millions and millions. So I go through and fork it, and the chickens eat the worms, they eat the sprouts, they eat all the sprouting weeds and stuff. And it makes just like the most incredible compost ever. And it's really easy. And it dropped my feed bill probably like 60% and increased the quality of the eggs by like an enormous amount. They're the best eggs. And I've had pastured birds and rotationally grazed birds and all kinds of stuff. And these chickens have the best eggs. And so I love it.
Yeah, you were saying the first chickens you ever see that it could be passed up.
Yeah, they actually get so full that they just don't even want to eat worms anymore. And I've never seen that in my life. Like, I'll go turn it some days and they're just like, yeah, whatever. We're full. And it's like, wow, chickens can get full. And
They are eating of cats, come to spit here.
they're in an area that's probably 40 foot by 20 foot. And all the vegetation from the farm goes in there. So like the other day, I put in a bunch of broccoli plants, and I put in a bunch of Napa cabbage, and I put in a bunch of daikon radishes that were bolting and rotting and so on. And I start mixing those in, and the worms just go absolutely crazy. Last year, there was so many worms that in some of the early spring mornings, there would just be piles, like literally like 6-inch tall piles of worms. And they were all in some sort of weird worm orgy, I think. And there was like 10 or 12 piles. And I let the chickens out, and the chickens just start eating them and going crazy. So there's so many worms. It's incredible.
Like, I mentioned for and so I can I have a lot of that follow so it's not both small. It's a little the area I used to guy is like I could favorite trees and so everybody play with each other how they were and spend so I'm reading it but I said I don't have to love there.
It is.
Oh yeah, I don't think that's just long and I used that and Jenny Orange your old dance.
Yeah, they'll supercharge it basically. So they're going to add biology, they're going to add fertility. So if you have like more woody kind of compost, like you're saying, they'll boost that. And that's kind of what happens on our farm. So like
For 5 years, so I've figured compost I had what I did like.
yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean it's super like fertile for vegetables though. Yeah, so like I said, it goes into the farm and then all that goes back. Some of the soil ends up in there and then it like supercharges it and then it goes back. And I find that you don't need very much. It's almost starting to become more of like a soil and a fertilizer than a compost. It's like gooey, like creamy, like worm castings almost. It's really cool stuff.
I guess we're kind of, that was actually some questions. The hard part is say let again in process called the relationship with the festival here. Is that like that? I used to have been.
Yeah, so I used to take all the field waste and put it in a big pile and turn it with the tractor every 3 days and all that kind of stuff. And then I'd take it out to the field and well, when you're doing 100 yards of compost, it's a lot of work to maintain that pile every 2 days, every 3 days. This method basically is the most passive, highest quality compost that I've ever made. So it reduced all that labors of making that pile. And then the other thing is it's mostly worm compost based. The worm compost is way better than thermophilic compost by microbiological count by alarm size. So it's good stuff.
Quickly, other ideas in my junior when they use it, I deal with that, ash and
That usually goes, everything goes from the chicken thing. Oh yeah. Even all of Bermuda grass, bindweed, and thistles, and everything. Yeah, doesn't matter. Yep, everything.
So as long as it gets hot enough.
Yeah, and the worms and the chickens. So like anything that starts to sprout, the worms just see it as a microgreen, so they just satch it. As the system does that continuously, they almost like system. Yep. And it can get more complex. So sometimes I'll build a hot compost pile on top of it, and the worms will like move their way through. Hot compost. Nope, it just goes into a metal ring. And because I'm making a hot compost pile with the right ratio of carbon to nitrogen, it gets really hot. And the worms come up and work the edge of the hot compost. It's pretty cool stuff. So the more the chicken compost system you interact with, the more you can get out of it. But if you want just passive, easy composting, it's just like the best way to go.
And we go to splash.
Yeah, we do tours all the time. If you want to come find me. Yeah, it's super easy. Who has a question for him? Sure, hard and like old school, like Emmers and stuff. Emmers? Yeah, like all the old ones.
So she asked, what's the difference between hard and soft meat? So soft meat has a lower protein effect generally. It's a softer grain, and so it's great to missing like hot, like things like pie crusts and pastries and things like that. Hard red wheat is more of the breads, things like that. They want to get good varieties. And he's asking also about einkorn and those kind of hard. Well, those are actually there's ancient grains like einkorn and emma, which before we had wheat, we had these that were less hybridized. And those are really great. They're hard to process, but they also have higher content of bran and higher content of fiber, higher content of pretty much everything except for protein. Are there any more questions? The highest protein content product we have is probably our bread blend, which I've put together a bread blend that has hard red spring wheats. It also has some Alcoa soft white and some rye, and some of our all-purpose. And so because it's concentrated and I've sifted some of the hard red, it's got a higher protein content. Uniques? Right. Rye has, I don't know why. That's a good question. I don't know why rye is, but when I put it in, it really likes it. It does get more bioactive. Yeah. I don't know why. That's a really good question.